A real fun game coming up on Saturday. We're fighting for the victory bell. It's Duke versus UNC, the Blue Devils versus the Tar Heels. The finest rivalry has another installment coming up this Saturday. Let's dive in on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It is so great to have you here with us on this Thursday, September 26th, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Duke football's got a big game coming up on Saturday as they get set to take on North Carolina, fresh off a win over Middle Tennessee State and a perfect record in non-conference play. Duke has the first ACC game of the 2024 season, and we will break it all down with our good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Go ahead and like this video, share it with your friends. Your support on the YouTube platform means so much to us, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. So let's bring him into the program. Here is Josh Cox back with us once again from the Section 17 podcast. He's at yet another football game, makes the trip over to Nashville this past weekend, and we see Duke improve to 4-0 on the young season. Josh, I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, JJ. Thanks for having me back on, man. Yeah, hit up Nash Vegas this past weekend. So for sure, I had a good time there.
I'm excited to get into this Duke and North Carolina matchup. Obviously, North Carolina coming in off of a loss against James Madison that a lot of the college football world is talking about, that game in particular. But I want to start with Duke and what they've been able to do so far this season, because we go into the year and a lot of sports books out there had the Blue Devils set at kind of 5.5 wins. And here we are, first time since 2018, Duke's got this unblemished, perfect record so far in non-conference play. They're already at 4. So in your eyes, like, how have things shifted in regards to how Duke looks at the rest of the season?
Yeah, I believe if you rewind, 6 weeks and you're looking at preseason, you're looking at the schedule in preseason as we did heading into the season, it was really important for Duke to go 4-0 in non-conference, and they've done that. But it's important for bowl eligibility. You only need 2 conference wins at that point to become bowl eligible. But I believe, the standard's been set higher than that in Durham over the last couple of years. And so I don't believe just getting to 6 wins, right, is necessarily, the goal. And so I definitely believe that there's a path to 8 wins with this team. And, the ACC opponents have not necessarily played up to their potential. Florida State being the obvious one, just got their first win of the season this past weekend against Cal. But you have teams like NC State that are just, I was on the hype train, man. I was on board. And that's not to say that the Wolfpack can't right the ship and get back playing well, but they've certainly not started the season, like they thought they would. And so I believe there are some more winnable games in Duke's conference schedule than what maybe we had initially thought. And so I definitely see a path with this 4-0 start. I see a path to an 8-win, potentially 8-win season.
We just got to find how those wins come to be, and it starts with this game coming up on Saturday against the Tar Heels. A lot of people talking about it. UNC has had Duke's number as of late. As you kind of reflect back on some of the Duke and North Carolina football memories that you've got, Josh, what have been the biggest reasons? I know oftentimes it's year by year differences and that sort of thing, but when you look back at the series, like, what are those things that really jump out to you?
Yeah, I mean, take it for how this is. It seems to mean more to UNC. It just seems that way, and I think it's kind of that way maybe even across over into basketball as well, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I love a really strong rivalry, and so it seems like they've taken it a little bit more seriously. You got a quote from Mac at the end of last season's, Duke UNC game. That's basically, that's what we're here to do, is to win this game. And so I think they've taken it seriously. And then, Duke has just been on the unfortunate end of the last couple of years, and maybe even historically there. But it just seems like that it's difficult for Duke to catch a break. Even going back to the jump pass interception year, Duke drives the ball 95 plus yards down the field, only to throw a kind of a freak interception, there inside at the 2-yard line or whatever it was. So, I think Duke's just been on the raw end of this. I think it's time for the new regime. Manny Diaz era is here. He's brought a fresh perspective to Duke football, and I think it's time to get that monkey off, the 5-year monkey off the back, right?
Yeah, let's take this thing for legit. Let's be serious about it. Let's go at home in particular. Like, it's going to be a great crowd on hand, I'm expecting, at Wallace Wade, and going to be a really fun installment in this one. And for the Duke football offense, we'll get to kind of both sides of the ball, but starting with the offense, Josh, I feel like they've got to be pleased with where they're at going through the non-conference schedule. A new quarterback. What in the world is Malik Murphy going to look like wearing that Duke jersey? It's his first time as a premier featured guy in college football and not the player that's starting for the injured starter. And through 4 games, man, how can you not be fired up about what you've seen?
Yeah, 65% or 65% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. One of those interceptions was that UConn interception. It was a freak play that got tipped, and it landed literally in the belly of a defensive lineman. He had no choice but to intercept it. So really 3 legitimate interceptions. Passer rating is great. In fact, just saw this earlier today. His PFF rating, he is 16th in the nation in the QB PFF ratings. And so completely pleased with what he's doing in the passing game. The talk amongst Duke fans, casual Duke fans, is definitely, his inability to run the football. But, when you're putting up passing numbers, 1,100 plus passing yards in your first 4 games, you're on pace for 3,300 passing yards in the season. That's pretty wild. And so I believe if you're Manny Diaz, if you're Jonathan Brewer, you've got to be very pleased with what Malik Murphy's doing. Maybe push him out of his comfort zone a little bit, and those run pass options, have him keep the football a couple different times, just to keep the defense honest. I believe now, they've scouted Duke enough, and these defensive ends are really crashing on the running backs and those RPOs just because he's not been a threat to run. I don't know where that's going to leave us with that, but at the end of the day, if he doesn't run, he's been very successful as a quarterback, and you can't argue with the talent and the numbers.
Yeah, when you look at what Duke's been able to do offensively, running the football has really picked up over the last couple of weeks. So that's something that the Tar Heels defense has to be aware of. For the Duke defense, they're in a pretty good spot as well going into this one, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that after we take timeout number 1 here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and just watch all of those winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get on action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When the picks hit, you get your money as quick as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONCollege on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. A proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Back on Locked On Blue Devils, I'm JJ Jackson. He's Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Promote the podcast, if you will, Josh. You guys are a lot of fun to listen to each and every week.
Sure, we do weekly podcasts throughout the football season. Do some stuff in the off season as well, but we're everywhere that you consume podcasts, beginning with YouTube. And so we appreciate the YouTube fam. It's always fun, the interactions there. And then we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, as JJ would appreciate here on Locked On. All the ratings and reviews you'd be willing to give to each of these podcasts would be awesome. And then on Twitter, and Instagram and TikTok at Duke FB Talk, and then Facebook, we have a group, Duke Football Talk. We try to keep it lively and fun, but then also informative about what's going on in the program. And yeah, we love the support from you. Thanks for having me on each and every week, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Excited to see all of this continue to come together each and every week, talking about wins, hopefully, on both this show and the Section 17 podcast. We love recapping wins. And if Duke is going to win this football game on Saturday against the Tar Heels, the defense has got to step up once again and make plays for Manny Diaz and Duke. What have you thought of the defensive performance through the first, third of the season here now, 4 games in?
Yeah, for sure. Well, on your outro from the first segment, you did mention the run game briefly, and I just want to highlight 3 rushing touchdowns at Middle Tennessee from the running backs. 1 from Peyton Jones, 2 from Star Thomas. Star Thomas had an incredible stat line. So
yeah, all 3 from
guys.
1 yard out.
Correct. Yeah. Shout out to those guys. Great game there. Duke's defense, number 1 in the country, tackles for loss. Right in the top 5 on sacks. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, top 20 overall total defense right now, ranked in the country. Now, certainly, let's be real and let's be honest. Those have been against the 4 non-conference opponents, none of which have really set the woods on fire. So things are going to become more challenging. Duke is heading into week 1 of the ACC schedule. As we know, there are high-powered offenses inside the ACC. There's bigger, faster, stronger players in the conference than there probably are in some of the non-conference opponents. And so that defense is going to be challenged, right? They're going to be challenged by better receivers, bigger, taller, faster receivers, by offensive lines that can, maybe keep the Duke defensive line at bay a little bit more than, say, a UConn was able to do. And so I think you're going to see a challenge here. And the question is, can Duke's defense step up to the challenge? I believe the answer is yes. I believe Manny Diaz and Jonathan Patke have, obviously prepped this team to understand what they're stepping into. And, it begins Saturday, and what is the most important game of the season thus far. And it may wind up being the most important game of the season, period. Once we get to the end, looking back on it, a week 5 matchup at home against your rival, packed out Wallace Wade Stadium. I mean, I promise you it's going to be packed, because I've had no fewer than 25 people reach out to me for tickets, and I do not have any, just to go on record. Mine are all accounted for. So anyway, but it's going to be a great environment, and Duke begins an 8-game, season right now with UNC this Saturday.
And what better place to do it, to your point, than at home at Wallace Wade Stadium, fresh off the start to the year that you've had, and against a North Carolina team who just gave up 70 points with their defense against James Madison, right? And so that film, very fresh for this Duke coaching staff to kind of watch, not only for the offense to exploit, but also trying to look at the defense, because North Carolina, to their credit, they did put 50 points up on the scoreboard. It's been kind of a revolving door at that quarterback spot so far this season for the Tar Heels. So work has to be done. I mean, this game's not going to be won on spreadsheets or anything other than, lining it up out there on the field come Saturday and making sure that Duke's got a good game plan, because there's just been so much turnover on that North Carolina offense.
I'll give you 2 sides of this of an opinion on what happened in Chapel Hill this past Saturday. The first side is, I can't believe that UNC, as well as their defense had played for the first 3 weeks of the season, gave up that amount of points to a James Madison team who, remember, Kurt Cignetti takes the head coaching job at Indiana.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, I haven't verified this, but what I read, 13 players left James Madison and went with him, if I'm not mistaken, to Indiana. So this is not just a James Madison team. This is a rebuilt this past offseason with a brand new coach, James Madison team. So that's crazy. So I'll give you that on one side. But on the other side, I do believe there are some, whether it's Duke fans, UNC fans, whatever it may be, that are overreacting to what happened this past Saturday. I'll give you a for instance, JJ. I believe it's played itself out this way. Not even just in football. We can point to basketball games historically. There's typically a game a season where Duke just doesn't show up. Last year, it was the Louisville game. Duke just did not show up that game. Louisville came in riding high, and Duke ran into a buzzsaw. And, in basketball, we've seen, I remember, I think it was at Clemson a few years ago, and Duke just got murdered in basketball by, 30-plus points. So I think every year, if you're not careful, you have one of those games where you just don't show up. That was UNC's game. They didn't show up. Once again, just kind of going back and forth here about your talking points. Yes, they did score 50 points, but they were down 28 in the first half. And of course, James Madison is going to play off a little bit. They're not going to, you're going to be able to move the ball. They're going to, human nature, man. You get to halftime and they've hung 53 points on the board. They're going to come out in that second half. They're going to be more conservative. They're going to, and so, and with if you're Criswell and you're UNC, you're going to be throwing the ball every single down. So I think a little bit of that is also inflated. Like Criswell would not have had that good of a game in a close game. There's no way in the world he would have had that good of a game. So all that to say, JJ, and let me wrap all of that ADHD that I just put out there up in one sentence. Duke and UNC are going to show up play this Saturday, and you can take the first 4 weeks and you can erase them.
Yep.
Because it is the battle for the victory bell. You could take the 3-1 and the 4-0 record, and you could throw that out the window as well. And a lot of these players played high school football against each other. A lot of these players are very familiar with each other. They run into each other at restaurants. They run into each other at parties. They know each other. This is a rivalry game. There are recruits that are going to be in those stands that are from North Carolina that are choosing between the two schools and probably throwing NC State and Wake Forest into that mix.
Right.
As well. This game means a whole lot. And so I think it's the rivalry that you can just kind of erase all of the history and you're gonna put it out on the field this Saturday.
Without a doubt. I'm excited to see this game play out. I'm hopeful that the victory bell can turn back into the right shade of blue following this one. And what a coaching matchup we've got as well. A lot of intrigue and storylines there. Mac Brown and Manny Diaz set to go head-to-head. We'll have some final thoughts on the game, the coaches that make up this fine rivalry, and so much more after one more timeout. Locked On Blue Devils, sponsored by FanDuel, of course, America's #1 sports book. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. The NFL is back in action tonight. What a battle in the NFC East for your Thursday night football game, with the Dallas Cowboys traveling up north to take on the New York Giants. Cowboys-Giants, going to be a fun one, and we're going to be following all the action tonight over at FanDuel. You can get in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Back on the program, JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Apologies once again, my voice continues to get better day by day, just a slow grind, but we're committed to this, Josh. It's football season. We're bringing them great conversations each and every day, man.
Listen, man, I completely get it. I mean, for the last few years, I've been a pastor, so I would speak on Sunday mornings. And during football season, it was like a toss-up, man. Of like, after a Duke home game, it was like, hey, it's going to be a quick one. It's going to be a quick one today because my voice is only lasting a certain amount of time. And you were podcasting 5 days a week. You were doing radio shows and whatever else you do there in the media world down in Alabama. And by the way, stay safe in these storms, JJ, as they're coming through. But yeah, man, it can definitely take its toll on the voice every now and then for sure.
But we keep fighting, and that's what we're expecting to see on Saturday. A good old fight between Duke and North Carolina. Going to be a really fun one, and talk about some fiery and kind of testy head coaches that are going to go head-to-head against one another. You've got Manny Diaz making his debut in this rivalry as the Duke head football coach against Mac Brown, who he's worked with previously. They've had battles when Manny Diaz was at the head coach of Miami. Mac Brown 3-0 against Manny Diaz in those matchups. And I got to say it, Mac Brown has owned and dominated the Duke Blue Devils since he's been the Tar Heels head coach. Time to kind of get back even for this Duke football team coming up on Saturday.
Yes. I mean, you just covered a lot there, man. I mean, first of all, with Manny Diaz, you have the fact that he coached at NC State as well under Chuck Amato. And so he is well aware of the rivalry, right? He is well aware of not only the Duke and UNC rivalry, but then the NC State UNC rivalry. So I would say this, Manny Diaz has probably got double skin in this game as far as like, I'm not going to say the hatred of UNC, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. The rivalry. He understands it from the Wolfpack perspective, and now he's beginning to understand it from the Duke perspective. And so I think that's one way of looking at it. You have the situation where Mac Brown fired Manny Diaz back in the day as well. And then from that, there was the awkward handshake that's been shared around the Twitterverse over the last week or so, where when Coach Diaz was in Miami and UNC beat them, Mac wanted to stick around and talk a little bit more at the end of the game. Coach Diaz was ready to move on, and there was kind of this awkward like grab, hug, pat, talk, move on thing. So yeah, there's definitely skin in the game here, JJ. We'd be foolish to not think there is. There's some skin in the game. There's going to be skin in the game when Coach Diaz, when he takes the team to Miami, to Coral Gables. This one means more, and it would mean more if they were unrelated. It meant more last year when it was Coach Elko and Mac Brown, who really didn't have a history, right?
Yep.
But it means there's got to be a little bit of an extra edge. And if Coach Diaz was on this podcast, he would say that is not what the players better come to freaking play. No matter what, no matter. But I think, there's got to be a little bit in the back of your mind of going like, yeah, I want to win this game. Like it is our rival. It is the victory bell. It's been 5 years. And then he would not admit it. But like in the back of your head, there's got to be like, this guy fired me.
Yeah.
And then there was the awkward exchange. And so I'm going to win this football game Saturday, and I'm going to respectfully walk and shake his hand and move on after the game.
Keep it moving. Yep.
Keep it rolling, man. And I, once again, if Manny Diaz was here, he would not say that. But I think human nature demands that in the back of your head, that is there.
Okay, so for this one, Duke, North Carolina, 4:00 Eastern on Saturday afternoon from Wallace Wade Stadium. What's going to be the big difference? We've talked about a lot today, Josh. We've talked offense. We've talked defense. Haven't really touched on special teams, but we've seen so many of these games come down to, field goals at the very end or being decided by a single possession. What do you look at when you look at the difference in this one?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have a UNC team that's I believe vastly different than any previous UNC team over in recent history. They feature Omarion Hampton, who I voted as the ACC Player of the Year preseason. Yeah. So I have a lot of respect for him. I believe he's the best. He is the best running back in the conference. He's up there in the nation.
Absolutely.
A ton of respect for him. They also feature two really, really good tight ends, Nesbitt and Copenhaver. In fact, both of those guys scored touchdowns, I believe, this past weekend. And that's kind of different, right? You're used to the Josh Downs and the guys on the outside a little bit, historically with UNC, Antoine Williams, others that were just able to really do what they needed to do on the outside. So it's a little bit different there. So I will say, I believe this comes down to, can Duke keep Hampton, not allow Hampton to take the game over? I believe that's what it's going to come down to. The trenches, can they keep Hampton from having a multiple touchdown game where they're able to grind the clock and they're able to just absolutely wear the Duke defense down? That's number one. And then on the other side of the football, the offense has gone through these stages, sometimes in the third quarter, where it's like they forget what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is attributed to. But you can't have three drives that stall, right? You can't go 3 and outs in a row. And so I think those are the two things if you're looking at it from those perspectives. And then in every game, I mean, you're going to have like special teams, can you create a play on special teams, right? Can you get a punt return, kick return? Can you force a fumble or whatever it might be. So those are all, and then the turnover battle. I mean, Duke, and that's obvious. Coach Diaz is really big on negative plays and forcing turnovers. All that plays into it. But I do believe can the offense sustain consistency throughout the game, and can the defense control Hampton? You're not going to stop him. You're not. Can you control him?
That's the question that needs to be answered, and we will be able to start to get those answers again coming up on Saturday when this one kicks off. Josh, it is always so good to see you, man. One final time, promote your work and everything you got going on.
Yeah, for sure. At Duke FB Talk, if you want to talk Duke football, you're going to get some of it here on Locked On Blue Devils. You're going to get some of it there. And there's a couple other podcasts. I know JJ has other guests on as well that talk a lot of Duke football. We're a supportive family around here. And so check us all out. And then if you really want to support the whole family, give all the family some 5-star reviews and ratings, because that really does help.
All right. We'll see you again soon, Josh. Thanks for the time today.
All right. Go Duke.
That's Josh Cox joining us here on today's show. Always appreciate his time and insight, and go check out all the great work that he does, not only with the Section 17 podcast, but talked with him for the Durham Devils Club last week. And he's got a lot going on, and so grateful for his time. Let's go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.